Tesla has made an interesting choice in that they either dismantled or rearranged their public relations department. So what they did is basically said, we don't need public relations anymore. Now, to be clear, I don't think that that's what they really said, in a sense that they said we don't need public relations. I think all they said is that traditional public relations, the way it has been done, is not going to be done anymore at Tesla. I think this is an interesting topic because it tells a few stories. It tells a story about how modern companies look at the news flow. It tells also a story about how investors should be looking at news emanating from companies. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's October 11th, 2020. This is Krim Delco. Today there's no update. It's Sunday. So I want to just jump right into the topic. Tesla has said that they don't have a public relations department anymore. And what that means is a couple of things. First, they decided to change the way they communicate with the public, in particular also with the market. I mean, this is very relevant for investors. And just to be clear, Tesla still has investor relations department, and the investor relations situation at Tesla is still relatively traditional. But my hunch is also that will change going forward. But more fundamentally, I think that public relations department dismantling means two things. Number one, we don't want to disseminate information anymore in the traditional way. And number two, we have a better way to do it. This is the key. This is not just about, we don't like the public, we don't like, public relations is not necessary, we're just not going to do it. This is not what they're actually doing. In my view, what they're saying is the traditional way doesn't work, we're going to do it in a different way, in a better way. Now, in order to discuss that, let's talk a little bit about what is the traditional way of public relations. The traditional way of public relations is that you have a department of people, and they are in the business of drafting press releases, making sure that all the news that the company has to convey to the public goes through that department. So it's like a funnel, basically, where all the company's news get funneled through the PR department and then disseminated into the world. And this is just the beginning. There is also the receiving end of that, which is the news organizations of this world. So there is a workflow, which is, let's say, a scientist at Tesla develops a new technology. That information goes to the PR department. The PR department drafts a press release. The press release goes to the news organizations. They write an article about it, and that's it. And then, it just keeps going like that. And I think what Tesla is doing here is dismantling this whole workflow. They're not just saying that we are not happy with our own public relations department. They're also saying, and this is the key message here, we're not happy with the receiving end of public relations, which is all these news organizations. We basically think that all those news organizations are not doing a good job. Number one, they are not accurate and not in the position to really convey our information. But more importantly, there's probably better ways to do it. And I want to talk about this a little bit. The second point here, which is, well, what's the alternative to traditional public relations? And I would say there's two alternatives to that. Number one is what we all consider the Tesla Twitter account of Elon Musk. So in a nutshell, it's Twitter doing this job. And I've heard several people, in particular the Electrek guys, but also other people complaining about this centricity of, well, if Elon Musk just does all the tweets, that's not okay. That's very centric. That's very one-person centric kind of information dissemination. That's not okay. And I would say two things to that. I think that the point is that I don't think Elon Musk is literally sitting there and tweeting. He probably has a Twitter department. He probably has people reading his Twitter and organizing his Twitter and also filtering all the comments and all that stuff which is coming back through Twitter into Tesla and generating a narrative which is kind of what the PR department used to do. And it's just a different way to do it. And I think, therefore, my thesis is that the new PR department of Tesla is the Twitter account of Elon Musk, which probably is a couple of people, maybe the same amount, even more people working on this account. This is not just one person. The second point I would say is that dissemination of information in this day and age also is working through other social media, and particularly YouTube. So there's a lot of YouTubers, some famous, some less famous, but there is a crowd of people who are aggressively soliciting information, talking about what's going on with Tesla, and disseminating that information. These people are not functioning in a traditional news organization way, which is we're just sitting there waiting for the press release to come in. They're going out actively looking for the information. Now, I don't know specifically if that is something that Tesla is also curating, but for sure, there is a way for Tesla to disseminate information through these people, let's say YouTubers. They're doing some of that, and particularly also through Twitter. But my point here is that this whole dissemination, this dismantling of the PR, the point that we don't need a PR anymore is, in a sense, misleading. It's not that we don't need a PR, it is that we don't like the traditional workflow of news. And this is more of a problem for the news organizations, or it's more of a sign of a problem of news organizations than it actually is a sign of what Tesla is thinking. I think the traditional news organization is dead. It's as simple as that. Starting with the newspaper, the magazines, the TV news, all of that, that whole complex of news gathering through PR is dead. Now, that doesn't mean that news generation, creating stories, creating narratives, creating all these things, it doesn't mean that that is gone. Actually, I would say it's even the other way around. I would say that probably it's even much more important in this day and age to have a clear understanding of what kind of story you're telling and to manage and architect that story. However, it happens in very different ways. Again, I think that modern news organization, I've seen that from the inside, I've worked in news organizations myself, is I would say a lazy receiving type organization where they just wait until the news comes in and then either just paraphrase what they've been told or maybe sometimes add a little bit something. But in the end, it's not something unique. There's no uniqueness. And I think that is the key. This is now a message to all the news organizations out there. You need to have some unique story to tell, otherwise you're irrelevant. Now, having said all of this, why is this important for us at Orange Capital Partners? I think this has huge implications also on our work, on our research, on the way we work. Because as a company, we are in the business of allocating money to disruptive technologies that have the potential to generate a lot of wealth and also have a lot of impact. Now, in order to do that, of course, we have to know what's going on out there. We have to find those investments, and we have to be able to monitor their progress against our thesis. And therefore, we have to be also analyzing news. Now, having said that, I think it's not necessarily, we're not in the news business, because news is, I would say, almost always irrelevant. News, in a sense, somebody said this happened, that happened, the numbers, the this, the that, a lot of these things, a lot of the headlines, a lot of the clickbait, all that stuff, it's not very relevant for our investment thesis. What's relevant for our investment thesis, for example, was Battery Day. What's incredibly relevant for our investment thesis is to occasionally talk to people. I think that's very important. Talking to people, getting a sense for what they're thinking, what they're actually doing, because we have to make sure we calibrate ourselves against the reality, against what we think, let's say, a company like Tesla is doing relative to what they're actually doing. And we can only do that by let's say, visiting the factories, talking to management, etc. Now, our access has been better in the past. I think with size, Tesla has become a little bit less accessible. That's fine. That happens. We still have avenues to pursue, to have the potential to at least have conversations, and if not, at least follow other conversations, etc. So there are ways to still see what's going on inside the company. And again, these are not news. These are more important pieces of information that we need to have in order to calibrate our own thesis. So, for example, if we believe that there is a disruptive force in place, then we can test that against the innovator's dilemma concept. And for example, that's something where, innovator's dilemma concept is a theory of competitive response. So we can just follow, let's say, how is competition responding to Tesla innovation, and as long as that is sort of in line with the innovator's dilemma concept, then we can be assured that this is a real disruptive technology. We can also look at the innovation stack concept and then ask ourselves questions such as, well, are they still in the process of building an innovation stack, or are they at this point maybe getting lazy or getting complacent and things like that? And if that's the case, then of course we have to change our thesis again. So these are just sort of checkpoints that we are carefully curating as investors. And those checkpoints are not given to us through a PR department. So the point is that the lack of PR for us makes actually no difference. In fact, we've been working without that PR department already for a long time. So therefore, we're not necessarily interested in having one, and we don't mind if they dismantle it. And it also shows that our workflow has changed. And it's a good reminder of how our workflow has changed, because sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we, particularly, Orange Capital Partners has been around for 12 years, and we've been working in the industry before for many years. So we're a little bit old school also, and we are definitely in a new world, in a world which is not old school anymore. And it's good to have that check to see, okay, we have changed, we're adapting, we're making new inroads into the way we work also, which is very important to be able to keep up with the innovations and the new things which are happening, particularly in Silicon Valley. So it's very important for a fund to have that ability to adjust their own workflow to the new situation in the entrepreneurial world, which is where wealth is really generated. So to summarize, Tesla dismantling their PR department, it's another step in the right direction. It's actually part of the innovation stack again. It's something very small. You might think, well, it's not that important, but it's actually really important, because it means also that the information flow within Tesla is flowing in a way which is geared towards funds like us, geared toward people who are not interested in selling research, convincing others that we know more than others, or any of that stuff, any of that traditional Wall Street type narrative. And it's more geared towards people who are interested in the substance, who are interested in what we believe the three principles that we build our investments on. Number one, the 0 to 1 principle, which is, are we building a sustainable monopoly here? Number two, the innovation stack. Are we doing this, the building of the sustainable monopoly, through a continuous iteration of solving problems, creating new problems, solving problems? And third, are we within a disruptive force here, which basically means that our competitors are still either not interested in competing with us, or are not able to compete with us, or are focusing themselves on completely different parts of the value chain because they either don't want to or cannot compete in that market that we're creating. So as long as we're within that flow and we can calibrate our own thesis against the news flow that we're getting from the company, and that is happening not through the PR department, but again, it's happening through things like Twitter and other social media. As long as that's working for us, we're actually very happy, and it's working really well with Tesla. Actually, it's working much better than when we work with traditional companies where the press releases are cookie cutter and they're not really saying anything and it's just another part of the innovation stack that we believe is showing that Tesla is the right investment for us. Thank you.